Well, good morning, Journey. It's so good to be with you. Like Jack said, my name is Steve Norman. I represent a Christian counseling agency in the Holland Zeeland area called Winning at Home. We do Christ-based counseling and coaching for individuals, families, and businesses. It's my joy to be with you today, continuing on in our series. Before we jump in, I just want to say I don't get a vote next week, but I do know that Joel Gorvet is an amazing, amazing man. And I can't wait to see what God is going to do in and through you as you kind of discern that process. But again, this is my last Sunday speaking here, so I hope this doesn't get me in trouble. But if I were you, I would vote yes, because I think he's a good all-around dude. I think he loves Jesus. I think he loves this place. I think good things are in store for Journey. This series, Million Little Miracles, if you ever have a chance to read the stories of Jesus, you'll see that his miracles fall into a couple different buckets. I took a class once called The Miracles of Jesus, and they go, every single miracle that Jesus performs can fall into one of three categories. It's either a miracle over sickness, it's a miracle of healing, or it's a miracle over evil. It's usually like an exorcism from some kind of demonic power, or it's a miracle over nature. Jesus miraculously multiplies bread or fish or causes a storm to cease. But every single miracle is a little bit different in the way that it gets manifest, the way that it is executed. But every miracle is the same in that every miracle has a message. Every miracle has a message. Jesus isn't just kind of like randomly roaming around performing magic tricks. Jesus is performing miracles that A, reveal the character of God, reveal the authority of God, reveal the kindness of God, reveal the compassion of God, and remind us who we are and who we're not. So today we're going to jump into a miracle, and as you listen to what God says, I want you to kind of think about what you think the message behind this miracle might be. This is found in 1 Kings chapter 18. We're calling this Fire on the Mountain. About 3,000 years ago, the people of Israel have a problem. They've spent so little time in worship and study and reflection of God that they have lost their way. And as a result, when they were exposed to false gods, competing gods, the idols of their neighbors, they decided to follow in those footsteps. And so we've got a mess. We've got a people who are called to be the people of God who have lost their way and are bending their knees and bowing their hearts to idols that don't love them, know them, or care about them. We pick up the story here in 1 Kings chapter 18. After a long time, in the third year, the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Go and present yourself to Ahab. This is the evil king. He's married to an evil queen named Jezebel. He goes, and I will send rain on the land. They haven't had rain for almost 3.5 years. So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab had summoned Obadiah, his palace administrator. Obadiah was a devout believer in the Lord. When Jezebel was killing off the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had taken 100 prophets and hidden them in 2 caves, 50 in each, and supplied them with food and water. I just want to do a little aside here. You ever have a season in your life where you feel like God is hiding you in a cave? Maybe God has put you aside from the thing that you said that you wanted to do, and you're not sure why God has you in the spot that you're in. I love it in this story. It's a reminder that sometimes God puts us in cave seasons, not to punish us, but to protect us. So if you're in a season right now where maybe you're not getting everything that you thought that you wanted, maybe just pivot that for a second and say, God, maybe you're not holding out on me. Maybe you're protecting me from something that isn't good for me now or isn't good for me down the road. So just kind of put that in the back of your brain. It might come in handy later. Ahab said to Obadiah, go through all of the land, to all the springs and valleys. Maybe we can find some grass to keep the horses and mules alive so that we won't have to kill any of our animals. So they divided the land that they were to cover, Ahab going in one direction and Obadiah going in the other. And as Obadiah was walking along, Elijah met him. And Obadiah recognized him, bowed down to the ground and said, is it really you, my lord Elijah? Yes, he replied. Go tell your master the king, Elijah is here. What have I done wrong? Asked Obadiah, that you are handing your servant over to Ahab to be put to death. As surely as the Lord lives, there is not a nation or kingdom where my master has not sent someone to look for you. And whenever a nation or kingdom claimed you weren't there, he made them swear they could not find you. But now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah is here? I don't know where the Spirit of the Lord may carry you after I leave you. Apparently the Spirit of the Lord had a habit of picking Elijah up and dropping him off in different places. He goes, if I go and tell Ahab and he doesn't find you, he's going to kill me. Yet I, your servant, have worshiped the Lord since my youth. Haven't you heard, my Lord? What Jezebel did was killing the prophets of the Lord, and I hid 100 of the prophets in 2 caves, 50 in each, and supplied them with food and water. And now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah's here? He will kill me. And Elijah said, as surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will present myself to Ahab today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him. And Ahab went to meet Elijah. And when he saw Elijah, he said to him, is that you, you troubler of Israel? And I love Elijah's like, I have not made trouble for Israel, but you and your father's family have. I'm not a troubler, you're a troubler. You have abandoned the Lord's command, and you have followed the Baals, these false idols. Idol worship is usually a slippery slope in Israel. People don't like roll out of bed and decide to be pagans one day. It's a slow burn. It is a gradual turning away from God's heart and God's commands. And once they are a free people, they choose another god to fill the vacuum that was left when they turned away from God. Idols don't usually start out as idols. Idols usually start out as good and beautiful things. But somebody once said, idol worship happens when a good thing becomes a god. Timothy Keller said, when a good thing becomes the ultimate thing, that's when we start having idols. So some of us may have seen idols pop up in different corners of our lives or lives of people that we love. Idols like money or sex or career or family or kids or church. I've done pastoral work for a lot of time. For some people, ministry can turn into an idol. Country can be an idol. Sports can be an idol. These are all surface idols. But Tim Keller, in his book, Counterfeit God, says deep idols are the root longings behind these surface idols. He goes, the real idols of our hearts are usually idols of power, control, revenge, intimacy, or greed. One pastor, Don Finto, says, if you want to find out what your God is, it's the one thing you can't get enough of. It's like the one thing you can't get enough of is most likely a God that you are aiming your heart towards. The passage continues in verse 19. Elijah said, now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. And Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? The word there can actually mean hesitate or limp. How long will you limp between two opinions? How long is it going to take you to make up your mind about who is going to be the Lord and King and God of your life? He goes, if the Lord is God, follow him. And if Baal is God, follow him. But the people said nothing. People said nothing. Anybody ever tell you sometimes like not making a decision is making a decision? So the fact that the people are quiet shows that in some sense they've already made up their mind. It's interesting here, the word Lord there actually means Jehovah. When Elijah says Lord, he's using a Hebrew word that means Jehovah. Jehovah means the existing one, the one who is real. But the word Baal in their culture had like a small L, Lord, and it meant the God of rain. What is ironic about the fact that people are worshiping a God of rain? They're in the middle of a drought. So how good is your rain God if your rain God hasn't showed up in 3.5 years? And your crops are dead and your animals are about to die. And yet people keep saying like, well, we're not sure which God is God. And Elijah's like, do the math, friends. Do the math. Then Elijah said to them, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left. We talked about that a little bit last week. He's not entirely right. He thinks he's right, but he's not right. In fact, Obadiah just told him how many prophets has Obadiah hid? 100. So he's like, there are at least 100 more, but Elijah sometimes has a flair for the dramatic, and he can be kind of stuck in his own little world. I'm the only one left. But Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves. Let them cut it to pieces and let him put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I'll call on the name of my God, and the God who answers by fire, he is God. And all the people said, what you say is good. They're like, this is going to be epic. They're like, either way, we're getting fireworks. We just don't know who's paying for them. And Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one and prepare it first, because there's so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. So they took the bull given them and they prepared it. And they called on the name of Baal from morning until noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted. but there's no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. And at noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder. Elijah's talking, prophet smack. Surely he's a god. Perhaps he's deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and must be awakened. And it's funny for a moment until things turn really dark, which is right about now. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Think about that for a moment. You got 450 prophets who pray all day for nothing. If we do the math, there's about 5,000 prayer hours that have gone into this sacrifice. If you prayed to your Baal for 1 hour a day, it would take you 13 and a half years to hit that number. How many of you had to learn the hard way that our idols can't hear us? Our idols cannot see us. They are lifeless. Our idols cannot help us. They are powerless. And our idols do not love us. They are heartless. And yet, our idols are still incredibly dangerous because they are insatiable. Nothing is ever enough. Whatever you give your idol, it will always ask for more. Your idol will take your time, your idol will take your energy, and your idols will bleed you dry. In the Old Testament, your blood was seen as your life force. We read in Leviticus chapter 17:11, it says, "For a life of a creature is in its blood." So when the prophets of Baal are literally bleeding themselves out for idol, what are they doing? They are literally giving him their life. They're giving him their life. The story continues. Elijah said to the people, "Come here to me." And they came to him and repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. And Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." And with the stones, he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And then he dug a trench around the altar, large enough to hold 2 seahs, which is about 24 pounds of seed. And he arranged the wood and cut the bull into pieces and laid it on the wood. And he said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and the wood." Now, this is scandalous in its own right because we're still in the middle of a drought. So for him to be able to say, fill 4 large, take 100 gallons of water and pour it out, people are like, wait a second, we came thirsty and you're wasting water. He goes, pour these gallons, pour dozens of gallons of water on the sacrifice. I'm not really good at science, but I was raised a Boy Scout, and we were taught that it's really hard to light a fire with wet wood. And Elijah's like, I want you, don't spritz this, soak this. Soak the wood. And then he says, do it again. And then he says, do it a 3rd time. And they did it a 3rd time. And the water ran down the altar and even filled the trench. There's 2 ways that people experience purification in the gospel. One is by washing, and the other was by fire. If you had a holy article and you needed to cleanse it, first you would wash it with water, and if water didn't remove the impurities, then you would pass it through the fire and the firewood. And so what I love about this story is that Elijah is taking water and pouring it over the stones. The stones represent the tribes represent the people. It's an act of baptism. It's an act of washing. So it's not just prophet theater. This isn't just his version of a smoke machine. This is a symbolic washing, a rinsing of the people of their sins. And at the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me. So these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." And then the fire of the Lord fell and burned the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and burned up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God." How many hours did the prophets of Baal end up praying that their God would send them fire? 5,000. How long does Elijah pray to his God that he would send fire? 18 seconds. The prophets of Baal literally pray 1,000,000 more times than Elijah does, and they get nothing. Elijah prays like 3 sentences, and fire falls from the sky. Is there any doubt to anybody who is watching who the Lord is that day? God is committed to exposing their idols as the counterfeits that they are. And if God was willing to do that for Israel, he's willing to do it for us too. God longs to reveal himself as Jehovah, the God who is real in every way to them, and he longs to do it in every way to us as well. In his mercy, God will topple our idols to declare his love for us. Now, this is one of my favorite idol stories in all of Scripture, but another one is found in 1 Samuel chapter 5. In ancient times, God had commanded that Moses build an ark of the covenant, and it was a wooden box that was overlaid with gold. And inside of the Ark of the Covenant were initially placed a couple of really beautiful things. One was a jar of manna, one was Moses' staff, and then the other one were the 2 tablets of the covenant. And every single time the people came before the ark, it was as if they were coming to the presence of God. And in fact, if you didn't have the priestly credentials, you could not be in the same room as the ark without dying. Anybody ever remember Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark? I'm dating myself a little bit, but like, this is the ark that if you opened it up and looked inside of it and you were a Nazi and not a priest, your face would melt off. Anybody remember that one? That's the Ark of the Covenant that we're talking about. So their ark represented God's presence among them. And one time, even though the people had lost their way again, they're following idols again, they had taken the Ark of the Covenant and they brought it out to battle with them because they're like, we're losing the battle against the Philistines, but rather than treating the Ark as the presence of God, they were treating it like a lucky charm. They were like, well, we'll just drag the Ark out to combat with us and then we'll know we'll win. Well, the unthinkable happens. Not only do they lose the battle, but the Ark gets kidnapped. And the Philistines take the Ark of the Covenant and they put it in the same temple as their god Dagon. In ancient times, they had different deities for every zip code. So if you guys were like different countries, you would have a god, you would have a god, you would have a god, you would have a god. And they would say, if we defeated another country, it must mean that our God is better than their God. So we'll take that God and we'll add that God to our collection. It was like almost like they were doing like trading cards, right? Like, now I have 3 gods and I started the day with only 1. So this is what we happened. The Philistines captured the Ark of God. They took it from Ebenezer, that's a city in Israel, to Ashdod, which is a city in where the Philistines lived. And they carried the Ark into Dagon's temple, and they set it beside Dagon. And when the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon fallen on his face on the ground before the Ark of the Lord. And this is what I love. Instead of saying, wow, our God is not as strong as we thought it was, what do? They took Dagon and they put him back in his place. Anybody ever do that? You give your time and your life and your energy to an idol that fails you over and over again, but in your naivete, in your immaturity, in your ignorance, in your refusal to be fully surrendered to God, you take that God and what do? You prop him back up again. Anybody, like, you don't have to raise your hand. Anybody ever done this before? You're like, oh, my God had a bad day. I will prop it up again. We'll try again. Well, that's what they do. And this is what I love. The following morning when they rose, there was Dagon fallen on his face again before the Ark of the Lord. But this time, his head and his hands were broken off and were lying on the threshold, and only his body remained. This is why, to this day, neither the priests of Dagon nor any other who enter Dagon's temple at Ashdod will step on the threshold. Like, so they keep worshiping that God, but they won't step on the place where their God fell down, which to me sounds a little bit absurd. Is it any accident that when Dagon fell the second time, his head and his hands broke off? What was God trying to tell the Philistines? He's like, this God cannot see you. He cannot hear you. He cannot speak to you, and because he has no hands, he cannot help you. And I don't know about you, but there have been seasons in my life where I keep propping up the thing that I want to put my trust in, and God, not out of his rage, but God, out of his mercy, will just flick that God down as many times as he needs to remind me that my confidence has been grossly misplaced. He's not doing that to punish me. He's doing that to set me free. Have you ever had a season in your life where something that was less than Jesus asked for your loyalty, and you gave that thing, that person, that company, that institution, your allegiance over and over and over, and it failed you again and again and again? And God, in his unflinching mercy, was saying, I'm not trying to hurt you, I'm just trying to get your attention. Will you listen to me now? Will you listen to me now? So how do you know where your idols are? I mentioned Timothy Keller's book, Counterfeit God, talks about 4 idols that tend to be pretty prominent for many of us these days are our mind, our money, our hope, and our heart. Our mind. He asks this question: where do your thoughts go when there is nothing demanding your attention? What do you daydream about? What do you regularly think about to get joy and comfort in the privacy of your heart? The answer to those questions will tip your hand and show you what might be getting your loyalty these days. Your money. Jesus says your heart is where your treasure is. Tim Keller says your money effortlessly flows towards your heart's greatest love. Think about that. Your money effortlessly flows towards your heart's greatest love. He goes, most of us tend to overspend on clothing, on our children, or on status symbols. Is that hitting close to home for a couple of us? I'll go first. It is for me. Hope. He goes, what do you have your hope in these days? And how do you respond if you don't get it? How do you respond if you don't get it? He goes, if we respond with explosive anger or deep despair when we don't get our way about X, then we may have found our real God. Has anybody noticed that we live in a culture where everybody's anger feels like it's on a hair trigger? And sometimes when you see another person explode in anger, it could be an indication that you have stepped really close to the thing that they worship. And maybe the reason that we're getting angry in our own lives is because other people have started to threaten something that we worship. Friends, if the one that we worship is Jehovah, the one true real God, nothing in this world is a threat to God. So if our worship is rightly oriented, then our anger should go down directly and consistently. But if we find ourselves getting filled with rage, especially at the drop of a hat or a snap of a finger, it's an indicator that we're worshiping something that is other than or less than the person of Jesus. And then in his book, Counterfeit Gods, Timothy Keller says, heart. He goes, look at your most uncontrollable emotions, especially those that never seem to lift and drive you to do things that you know are wrong. If you're angry, ask, is there something here so important that I must have it at all costs? Do the same thing with fear. Is there something here that I'm so afraid of that if it comes true, my life as I know it will unravel? Or guilt. Is there something here that I'm so guilty of that I feel like I can never get out from underneath that umbrella of shame? Ask yourself, am I so scared because something in my life is being threatened that I think is a necessity when it's not? Or am I so down on myself because I have failed at something that I think is a necessity when it isn't? If you're overworking, driving yourself into the ground with frantic activity, ask yourself, do I feel like I must have this in order to be fulfilled and significant? When you ask questions like that, when you pull your emotions up by the roots, as it were, you will often find your idols clinging to them there. If you pull your emotions up by the roots, my family and I spent way more time than we wanted to weeding yesterday. And you know that there's 2 different kinds of weeding. There's a lazy person's weeding where you can just kind of snap it off at the surface, but guess what? In a week, you're going to be dealing with that problem again. Or there's like the real, true, accurate weeding where you pull that all the way up from the roots. He goes, if you trace your emotions all the way down to the roots and pull them up, he goes, you'll find your idols clinging to them there. But the truth is, a lot of us haven't spent a whole lot of time exploring, managing, or monitoring our emotions, so we really don't have any idea. But if you were to spend, I don't know, like the next week journaling at the end of every day for 5 minutes and say, God, will you just help me call to mind the most dominant emotions that I had today? And will you show me what I need to know about those? What patterns do you think you might find? Because if there are emotions of shame, or emotions of fear, or emotions of rage, or maybe emotions of gratitude or joy, those are dashboard indicator lights for your soul that will tell you that something is going on, whether it's either positive or negative. Your idols demand your time, your energy, and your blood, but Jesus only ever asks for our trust. In fact, he gives us freely of his time and his energy and his concern and his power. Jesus is the anti-Baal. He allows himself to be cut. He allows himself to bleed. He allows himself to die a horrific death for every single one of us on a cross outside of Jerusalem. And no, God doesn't always answer our prayers by fire, but he has given us the only miracle that we need in this lifetime to get what we need at our core, and that is his bodily resurrection from the dead. Friends, if you only get one miracle in this lifetime, and it is the distinct and sincere awareness that Jesus Christ has risen from the dead and defeated sin and death and hell forever, that is the only miracle that you will need. One of my favorite miracles in Scripture is when a man who's been paralyzed from birth has 4 friends who care about him so much they can't get into a house where Jesus is performing miracles, so they cut a hole in the roof and they lower him down so that they can get Jesus' attention. And what is the first thing that Jesus says to this guy? He doesn't say, get up and walk. He says, son, your sins are forgiven. And everybody's like, you can't say that. Only God can say that. And Jesus says, just so that you know that I can have the authority to forgive his sins, son, get up and walk. The secondary miracle is the walking. The primary miracle is the redemption of his soul. And sometimes Jesus only gives us visible miracles to remind us that the invisible miracles are true. And so, friends, I want you to pray for miracles. But on the off chance that you don't get every miracle that you pray for, I want you to come back to this. Do I believe that Jesus Christ has the authority to heal wounds at the soul level? Do I believe that Jesus Christ has the ability to forgive the sins that I know about and the sins that I don't? Do I believe that Jesus Christ has the ability to reorient my heart away from the things that don't matter towards the things that do? Because if I believe in that, I've got enough miracles to set me up for eternity.